WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
On 11 March 2020, deeply concerned both by the alarming level of spread and severity and by the alarming level of inaction, WHO made the assessment that COVID-19 could be characterized as a pandemic.
Kerajaan memutuskan untuk melaksanakan Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan mulai 18 Mac 2020 iaitu lusa hingga 31 Mac 2020 di seluruh negara.
Mass movement and gathering across the country, including religious, sports, social, and cultural activities, are cancelled and prohibited. Foreign visitors are restricted to entry into the country. Kindergarten to universities are closed. We all had to work and study from home. At first, we thought this lockdown only lasted for 2 weeks. But now, almost a year later, this movement control order is still going on. However, the economy must survive despite the fact that we all are encouraged to stay at home. Therefore came the term the new normal. Around June 2020, government from most countries including Malaysia tried to reopen the public area, but with some restriction. Public hygiene now is taken seriously. There is a health protocol strictly provided to the public. Frontliners were sent to sanitize affected areas, especially in public places where large gathering of people occurred for disinfectant purposes. Places like office and conference space, sanitary facilities, public buildings, food preparation areas, and many more places. For prevention of virus spreading, wearing a mask has also been made compulsory. Gathering has also been made strictly prohibited. Although some public spaces such as schools, office, train station, and malls had reopened, people must maintain physical distance.
The outbreak of the virus has sickened more than 80 million people. At least 1.7 million people have died. As WHO and partners work together on the response, tracking the pandemic, advising on critical interventions, distributing vital medical supplies to those in need, they are racing to develop and deploy safe and effective vaccines. Vaccines save millions of lives each year. Vaccines work by training and preparing the body's natural defenses, the immune system, to recognize and fight off the viruses and bacteria they target. If the body is exposed to those disease-causing germs later, the body is immediately ready to destroy them, preventing illness. There are currently more than 50 COVID-19 vaccine candidates in trials. When a safe and effective vaccine is found, COVAX, led by WHO, Gavi, and SAPI, will facilitate the equitable access and distribution of these vaccines to protect people in all countries. People most at risk will be prioritized.
Particularly elderly people are at higher risk of this virus making them very sick. Other at-risk populations are people that have chronic diseases like diabetes or heart disease or kidney disease.
The vaccine may be a big hope for all of us in fighting this COVID-19 virus. After the development of vaccines, there were many questions from the general public. We have summarized some of the general questions that have been answered by WHO.
All attention is focused on the late October, early November timeframe. That's the earliest possible moment when any of the frontrunner vaccines from major manufacturers including AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna could enter regulatory review. If all the data confidently point to the vaccine exhibiting an acceptable level of safety and effectiveness, it is possible that one of these will then be granted emergency use authorization by the American FDA or its equivalent by other major national regulators.
The first question is, when will COVID-19 vaccines be ready for distribution? The first COVID-19 vaccines are beginning to be introduced in countries. Before COVID-19 vaccines can be delivered, the vaccines must be proven safe and effective in large phase 3 clinical trials. After that, WHO and other scientists have to conduct a series of reviews to analyze the results from clinical trials. Then they will recommend whether and how the vaccine should be used.
Pada hari ini, oleh kerana tak dapat nak umumkan harga secara teliti bagi setiap pembelian, walaupun kita dah umumkan harga keseluruhan.
As the final step, all approved vaccines will require distribution through a complex logistical process with rigorous stock management and temperature control. And then raise the question about the safety of the vaccine. WHO is cautiously optimistic that safe and effective vaccines for COVID-19 will be successfully developed. But for now, we can't be certain if or when a COVID-19 vaccine will be available. That is why we must not rely on a future vaccine to fight this pandemic. We must use all the tools we already have at our disposal, such as testing, contact tracing, physical distancing, and the use of masks. The next question is, what types of COVID-19 vaccines are being developed and how would they work? Scientists around the world are developing many potential vaccines for COVID-19. Several different types of potential vaccines for COVID-19 are in development, including inactivated or weakened virus vaccines, which use a form of the virus that has been inactivated or weakened so it doesn't cause disease but still generates an immune response. Protein-based vaccines, which use harmless fragments of proteins or protein shells that mimic the COVID-19 virus to safely generate an immune response. Viral vector vaccines, which use a virus that has been genetically engineered so that it can't cause disease but produces coronavirus proteins to safely generate an immune response. RNA and DNA vaccines, a cutting-edge approach that uses genetically engineered RNA or DNA to generate a protein that itself safely prompts an immune response. And last, will these vaccines provide long-term protection? It's too early to know if COVID-19 vaccines will provide long-term protection. Additional research is needed to answer this question. However, it's encouraging that available data suggests that most people who recover from COVID-19 develop an immune response that provides at least some period of protection against infection. Unfortunately, the government will be facing difficulties from a few groups of people who resist to believe in this vaccine and the prevention measure. If society is not educated enough, these groups of people will make the action taken in coping the virus a huge failure. They are the anti-vaxxers who totally oppose not just taking the vaccine but the idea of vaccine itself. Next, the anti-masker who claim the compulsory wearing of masks is a form of oppression to the society. Unfortunately, not everyone is willing to accept the new rules to keep the numbers down. Also, the dilemma among religious communities like Orthodox Jew and Muslim. Lastly, the people who believe in ridiculous conspiracies, assuming there is another purpose of vaccine which is other than medical purpose, which is obviously not true.
The race for a vaccine has been the biological equivalent of the moonshot. 1.5 million deaths, a global economy on its knees, a virus that came from the blue. But in labs around the world, scientists deconstructed its genetic code, designed more than 200 possible vaccines, and got the first through clinical trials in less than a year.
We all hope a vaccine can be a solution to this pandemic. In order to achieve that, we must continue to support the research, development, and vaccine. We hope the government around the globe will always support and create the best endorsement in developing the perfect vaccine. We must keep in our mind that developing a cure or vaccine is not easy. There is a long journey that usually takes months and years. Remember to still continue to maintain body immunity, wear a mask, keep physical distancing, and if not necessary, stay at home. Thank you for watching.